Welcome to Salesology, Conversations with Sales Leaders, the art of faster, easier, more profitable sales. When you're ready to transform your sales for today's transforming market, we've got you covered with your host, the queen of cold calling and founder of Salesology, award-winning author, speaker, sales trainer, and coach, Wendy Weiss.
Hi, welcome to Salesology, Conversations with Sales Leaders, the art of faster, easier, more profitable sales. And I'm your host, Wendy Weiss. I am the founder of Salesology and the Salesology Prospecting Method, and I'm also known as the queen of cold calling. So today we have a very special guest. I am so excited to welcome Andi Graham. And Andi is the CEO at Big C. It's a 40-person remote digital marketing agency. She founded the agency in 2005, and I'm going to ask her more about that. And her team provides marketing strategy, consulting, web design and development, SEO, media buying for mid-market organizations across the country. And Andi currently lives in Asheville, North Carolina with her husband, her teenage daughter, and 3 dogs, which I'm very impressed with since I have 2 cats. And she spends her weekends hiking, traveling, and skiing. So welcome, Andi.
Thanks, Wendy. It's good to be here.
Yeah. So I'm curious, the question on everyone's mind, how did you come up with the name Big C? What is the meaning behind Big C?
It's funny, once you do something like that, you're stuck with it. It's very hard to change. So the ship has moved in that direction and we're there now. So I actually was designing and developing websites back in 2004, 2003, and living in this house on the water in Madeira Beach, Florida. And I was looking out my window at dolphins jumping by, swimming past the dock. And one of the first clients that I had was a guy who was screen printing t-shirts in his tiny little studio apartment. And he was making thousands of t-shirts that were being sold at like Urban Outfitters and major national retailers. But he was just this little guy in his tiny little apartment, doing these things at night, after his day job. And so what I started doing was doing sort of branding and web design for small businesses. And at that time, the internet was sort of this great equalizer. If you could afford to build a website or figure out how to build a website when it was still very difficult, you could become as big as the big guys were. And so my friend who was screen printing t-shirts had this whole screen on his website, which was, for wholesale orders, call this number. And for retail orders, call this number. And it was all just ringing to his cell phone. They were all Google Voice numbers that rang directly to his cell phone. But it equalized him. It made him this little fish in this big sea. And so I kind of started thinking about, how we worked for little fish, but we made them sort of competitive in this big sea. And so that's where the name came from. And it's funny now as we work with mid-market organizations who are trying to sort of compete against national retailers, we're still sort of playing that same game, even though our clients are much more upstream and we're working with much larger organizations. So it's really fit, and it's what we like to do. We like to take the challenger brands and sort of help them find their way in this big market. So
I love that story.
Thanks.
Yeah. So what's the Andi Graham story? How did you end up doing what you're doing?
That's a great story. I don't actually know a great answer to that. I'm asked this frequently, but I always have sort of I've always been sort of inclined towards advertising and marketing. And so I had a full ride to college, my undergrad, for advertising. What I didn't realize at the time was it wasn't going to be the graphic design and creative side of advertising. It was going to be the financial side of advertising. And so I had classes in statistics and economics and, all these things that I didn't enjoy as much as I enjoyed the creative side. But they've helped me immensely, now that I'm running my own business. Of course, I'm very happy that I know how to read a balance sheet and understand a P&L. So those things helped. But I started doing that. And even as I was going through college, I was working at a pizza place or a music, record store. And I was, can I make the flyers for this? Can I redesign your menus? Can I redesign your logo? Can I build you guys a website? So I was constantly sort of taking that type of work. And so when I got out of college, I moved to Florida. I was working at a small private nonprofit liberal arts college, and I did the same thing. Even though I wasn't hired to do marketing, I started just grabbing marketing jobs and asking if I could, can I build an email marketing program for you? Can I help update your website? Can I build a website for this particular product you're trying to sell or this program? And I slowly got more and more involved in that until the point I had a wonderful boss, the dean of my department, who said, there's nowhere else to go for you at this organization. You need to move out. And so he helped me really find sort of my footing. And I got hired at another agency, an advertising agency, where I got some boots on the ground sort of work in that arena. And that was right when traditional agencies were going digital or trying to go digital. But digital at that time was more of a value add, like, oh, yes, we can do all this advertising for you, but we could also build a website. And they didn't know how to sell it, and they didn't know how to scope it. And so it was always a losing proposition. So I kind of just decided at one point that I could do it better on my own. If I could speak directly to clients and get really engaged in their sort of goals and help them build the tools that they needed, I could scope things in a better way and tell their story, because a big part of building a website isn't just the technical side, it's the storytelling side. And I think that's the most important side. And so I tended to have a knack for sort of marrying the technology with that storytelling side. So that's where it started in 2002, 2003. I was taking freelance clients. And then finally in 2005, I took it full time.
Okay, I love that story. I always love hearing about how people start their business. And so could you talk a little bit more about this storytelling? Because to me, sales is about telling that compelling story. And so how do you take that story and translate it, say, on a website or some kind of digital marketing campaign?
Well, I think what's most interesting is that we're not as much trying to tell the story of our clients as we are trying to tell the story and make their clients and their customers see themselves as part of that story, right? So we're trying to solve problems for their customers and their clients. And so the story that we tell when we're building websites is really the path of how their customers or clients can solve their own problems and see our client as a part of their solution set, right? So it's really just about understanding the headspace that the buyers are in. And those buyers being, we work with a lot of nonprofits, we work with higher education, they're all buyers, right? We're all looking for constituents, we're looking for donors, we're looking for students, but they're all there to sort of purchase whatever it is you're selling. And so how do we make those students or constituents or buyers or consumers feel like they're becoming, that they can build your tool or product or service or higher education program into whatever their life story is or their need is at the time. So we kind of take it in that direction, and we do a lot of work with all of our clients in sort of developing that journey of like, where are they and what are they feeling and what are they thinking when they're making these decisions, so that we can be offering the right amount of information as they sort of go down that path of discovery of figuring out what it is they're looking for.
So I'm curious, when you're working with your clients, how difficult is it to get them away from, here are all the things we do, and into telling the story of their clients and the outcomes? I know when we're working with clients that is so hard, because everybody wants to talk about what they do, but nobody cares what you do. They care how they're going to be better off when you finish.
Yep.
So how do you do that? I'm very curious.
I don't know that we have to convince anybody so much as there are a lot of times we don't have control. So as a marketing agency who do, with a wide range of things, we often get clients who already have a website. And so we're kind of stuck with this language that they can write their own content, right? And so it's all me. Here's what I do. Here's what we do. Here's what we do. Here's what we do. And so as we start changing their marketing language on their marketing collateral, whether that's lead funnels or landing pages, and they're seeing how it converts at a different rate, how they're seeing how it changes the behaviors of their consumers, we sort of, if we could just tweak the language on your homepage, if we could just tweak the language of how you're telling your story on your About Us, page, if we could just, and so they sort of start letting us in that way when we can show them that approach has been a little bit more proven than just an experiment at that point. But when we're starting from scratch, it's actually quite easy because we do this very long workshop at the beginning of every engagement we have with clients. And so if we're working on a website from soup to nuts, we're doing this huge workshop where it's almost all content and UX driven, where we're talking about what are your visitors looking for when they're coming to your website? What are they trying to accomplish? What are they looking to solve? So that we can keep the language focused around that. And we keep our exercises and activities with the client really focused on those things as well.
So I'm also curious, since you're doing marketing and lead generation for your clients, they then have to take those leads and do something with them. And I know one of the things that I see all the time is salespeople don't want the marketing leads because they don't think the marketing leads are any good. And then the marketing people get mad at the salespeople because they're not, marketing people are working really hard. Salespeople aren't doing anything with the leads. So how do you get the two on the same page so that it's like a cohesive whole?
Yeah, it's one of our biggest struggles, honestly, but we try to involve the salespeople in our work from the very beginning, because they hold the keys to the questions that are most frequently asked, the objections that are most frequently heard, the issues that most frequently arise. And so if those salespeople feel like they're part of the process of developing the marketing programs, they're a little bit more amenable to what's going on. And so a lot of times our lead generation funnels are built around tools that'll help the salespeople do their job. So, hey, here's a great PDF you can send out if your client says X, Y, or Z when you're on the phone with them or your prospect. And so we try to really work them into the process as early as possible, but I'm not going to lie, there's a lot of times when they're not. Maybe the CEO or an executive director wants to keep them out of those conversations. They're out selling. They don't need to be part of this. And those are the hardest times we have. And we had a client, a professional services organization a couple of years ago, and I'll never forget it because we were sending them between 30 and 40 qualified leads a month, and they were closing none when they only needed to close one. Like one client a month was all they could really onboard and handle at the size they were at. And we're sitting here saying, you just got 40 qualified leads. They're exactly they hit all the marks of what you're looking for in a lead. Oh, we didn't have time to follow up with them. We didn't know where they came from, and we're like, oh. So there's a lot of times that disconnect between sales and marketing is just a lack of us having the ability to coach the salespeople on how to use integrated CRM tools. If we're all on HubSpot, we can all see where the leads come from, when they're qualified, how you should reach out, what was important to them. We can record conversations and emails and all those different things in one place. So sometimes it's just old school resistance as much as it is, anything else to the salespeople wanting to understand modern marketing. But they're so aligned, like the psychological sales process is exactly the same way that marketing works. Like we're looking for what are the psychographics that we can harness with our language to help convince somebody that this is the right, solution for them, or that we're at the right place at the right time for them. So, and then it's up to marketing to sort of stay in front of them, because a lot of times those marketer qualified leads are not ready for the sales process yet. They're just sort of dipping their toe in the water. But if we can hit them with great quality content and tools and things that they can use to make the decision, and then the salesperson knows exactly when to reach out. And there's so many great technology tools now that can show you when a lead has revisited your website, call them, right? Or this person's been here 4 times in the past week now. Are you kidding me? Yes, that's time to reach out. So if we can set up those tools and harness them in the right way, it makes it a lot easier. But if we don't have great communication paths with the marketing team and the sales team, it's almost always a lose situation.
And so I hear you making a distinction between marketing qualified leads and sales qualified leads. Mm-hmm. So could you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So a lot of times somebody signs up for, well, it depends on the content we're producing. So sometimes there's top of the funnel content we're producing that's people engage with. So they're watching a recorded webinar, or maybe they're downloading a PDF of some sort, but it's not a case study, and it's not here's a demo of your product. It's not they're not ready to be sold your product. They're just, you maybe produced a white paper that was, how to, do something that your organization helps solve. Sales can often do harm by being too aggressive with those people at that stage in their journey, right? And you can turn off, and I can tell you as the CEO of a company that I get turned off all the time by really aggressive salespeople who reach out to me at the wrong point in my journey. Can you see that I'm just looking? Yes, we can, because digital allows us to track all of that. We can see what the interaction is with a different brand. And so it's not just the sales reach out has to be subtle enough and helpful enough that it doesn't feel too aggressive, and it has to be timed right. And so there is content we produce that's middle of the funnel, farther down the journey, which includes white papers or case studies or things like that, where those people are probably likely ready for, hey, let me show you how our tool solves that specific problem. Let me show you how we can help you, or how we've helped 4 of your biggest competitors, or whatever that looks like. So just knowing where the user is in their journey, and then we're developing content along those different places of their journey. So aligning that with the sales team is important. But again, a CRM like HubSpot or Salesforce, if it's set up properly, help with that as well, where they can trigger the marketing qualified leads who are starting to interact in a very light way with the website. And we work with our clients to talk about, when does this now become a sales qualified lead, and it gets moved into the sales funnel. So
that's so interesting to me, because I often feel that these concepts of warm leads and cold leads were kind of made up by salespeople and marketing people that don't necessarily bear any relation to reality, in that salespeople will often think, oh, this person opened an email, they're ready.
Yeah.
Like, hi, give me your credit card. Yeah. That's not happening.
No. Yeah.
Yeah. And so
not happening.
I think I hear you saying that you need to have just this very clear definition of when a lead becomes an actual prospect.
Yeah. And it's different for every client. Like, the buyer's journey is so different. Like, we're selling, we have some direct to consumer brands that we work with. They are click to convert, right? We're making sales directly off an ad on Instagram versus, nobody's going to download a white paper about a pre-prepared meal that they want to order. They're going, they're not going to interact with the brand in that way. And so it depends on your brand. When, even what we sell or another professional services organizations we work with, we're looking at a 2 to 4 month buying cycle. And so we don't want to push our hand too far in that first of the 4 months that they're sort of vetting different providers. We just want to be there as a resource that's, hey, here's a PDF around how to choose the right agency. Here's some questions you should ask an agency you're trying to hire about, how they're going to staff your project or whatever those things are. So helping them through that journey is one thing that's really helpful as well.
Okay, this is great stuff, Andi. And I want to ask you. We're going to take a pause for a moment from our sponsor, but when we come back, I want to ask you about the very controversial topic of inbound versus outbound.
Yeah.
And a few other things. So, but we're going to pause right now for a word from our sponsor, which is Salesology 3X Appointments. You know how frustrating and stressful it is when you leave every sales meeting wondering if your sales team knows how to sell, because they're not selling and all you ever hear from them are excuses. They blame your marketing, they say you need to do more social media, and they say you need a new website. You know something's wrong, but you don't quite know what it is, and you're even starting to wonder if it's you. You don't have a lot of options. You could fire them all and start from scratch. That would be expensive. And you're really sick of waking up in the middle of the night wondering how to fix this. Well, imagine instead that you have an easy-to-use, replicable system that ensures your team can easily schedule qualified appointments. And imagine that your team is excited and motivated. No more excuses, and you feel good. Salesology 3X Appointments can make that happen. If you are a business owner or a sales manager with an underperforming sales team, let's talk. Click on the link to my calendar in the show notes, schedule a time, and I look forward to meeting you. And now we are back with Andi Graham, CEO at Big C. And I want to get on to something really controversial here, which is inbound versus outbound. I mean, my company, we teach outbound prospecting. So clearly we are believers in outbound. There are a lot of people that say, no, inbound. Inbound's the way to go. So clearly you do inbound. So what is your thinking on this controversy? Because it always seems to be a hate relationship. Yeah. Don't do outbound, don't do inbound. It seems a little crazy to me. What do you think?
I think they work together perfectly. And we have a whole media buying division. And so that, to me, I consider outbound. That is push marketing. And so when you can couple a great outbound strategy with really sophisticated inbound methodology, our job as inbound marketers is to produce content that aligns with the needs of an outbound team. Like the stuff we're producing should answer the questions, solve the objections, all of those things of the sales team, such that they're looking at the inbound work we're doing and saying, let me use this PDF, let me send them that blog post, let me get them into that email nurturing funnel, because they are, these are the exact questions that the people I'm dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And so I think when you're doing outbound, having your target market, all the same things are important. You have to know your target market, you have to know what they're looking for, the problems you're solving, and really refine your messaging to that person's particular place in their journey. And I think that if we do a good job with our inbound, it just supports the outbound efforts. The outbound efforts, when they, what do you do when you're doing outbound? You're calling and saying, hey, look at us, we're amazing. No, you're saying, here's some case studies, and here's the work we've done for other people in your industry, and here's the cool things we can do for your company specifically. And that's all the same stuff we're producing on the inbound side. So it's just a matter of everyone responds to different triggers when they're in their buyer's journey. I am one who doesn't do well with sales. I am an inbound person. You don't ask me to buy, I will come to you when I'm ready, but I better be able to find the information I need on your website. Other people are not that way. They want it hand fed to them. Share with me why you're the best choice in this, in this place. But and I just think I think you have to have a marriage of both at all times. And I think a great outbound strategy includes, one of the things we love to do, this is a fun story. We can do a lot of really highly pinpointed outbound advertising. Meaning we can target a building within 600 feet of a building, and we can target people who are in the building for, say, longer than 6 or 8 hours, meaning people who work in the building. So we know that if we are targeting a specific company or organization, we want them to be our client, we can hit them with a suite of ads that are really targeted specifically at them, at any given moment. And so if we're doing our outbound strategies, when our salespeople are out looking for certain clients, it can include some advertising that leads them to, here's a PDF of case studies that we've done with other people in your industry, all of those things. And so I think the smartest approaches are a really intertwined network of both.
Absolutely. I always tell my clients that no matter where you find a lead, at some point you probably have to talk to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unless you had talked about your B2C clients that somebody wants to buy
totally different
meals delivered. Yeah, they're going to click on a link. But if somebody wants to buy a $50,000 something, they're probably not going to just click on a link, buy now.
Yep.
They probably want to talk to somebody.
Yep. And they want to see experience and expertise, and those are the things that we build in an inbound strategy, is like, how do we show both how we've solved these problems in the past and how we've, accomplished these things for others. So all of that stuff's important.
Yeah. Do you think that comes that it's a kind of fundamental misunderstanding, going back to what you were saying before, of that definition of what's a sales qualified lead?
I think it's a strange mix, because I think it depends on the client. And I would say that there are times when there's a million web design agencies in the world, right? And I can tell you that there are many of them with very strong outbound sales strategies. And those are likely not the teams, the clients who would buy in that way when somebody cold calls you or sends you an email. And I get them, which is the weirdest thing. Like, hey, we can rebuild your website for $700. The people who are going to buy that version of a website are not my clients. And so knowing who your clients are and how they buy, again, is the most important aspect of, whether they're marketing qualified or sales qualified. Is the only way you know that is if you know who they are and what they're buying and how they're buying it.
Yeah. And I want to ask you about something I was reading on your website, which I thought was so interesting, because you had on your blog, you had an article that was called "Client Engagement is Like Dating." Mm-hmm. And I actually always say that prospecting is like dating. Because if you want to go on a date with someone, you have to ask them.
Yeah.
So prospecting is like asking for the date, and selling is like going on the date. But you took it a step further, and you say client engagement is like dating. So would you share with us, how is client engagement like dating? I want to learn.
Well, I think our VP of client experience actually wrote that article, and we have, so we're at 40 people now, but even when we were a 20-person agency, we had a human on our staff that was 100% focused. She didn't manage employees. She didn't manage clients. She was only focused on refining and optimizing the client experience with our agency, because what we do is in professional services is so incredibly interdependent on our relationships with other humans that we have to build a process and structure around exactly how that relationship should look. And so much like dating, you have to consider, what is the other person thinking? What is the other person feeling? Where do they want to go tonight? Did they want to hang out for 3 hours, or were they staying the night? What do we need to plan for in the future? And are they thinking about kids? Are we thinking about a long-term here? And so knowing sort of when I like to call it the path of gradual engagement, but we have to slowly sort of dip our toes in the water with a client and really wow them up first, right? We have to show them our best side. We've got our full face of makeup and we've got everything on, but we somehow have to maintain that flame. And so keeping things sort of exciting and keeping them interesting. And then also making sure that they understand that we're working together towards the same goals. And B, we're not just here to serve you, and you're not just here to pay us. We're here as a partnership. We're both sort of putting in a little bit of work to make this relationship successful. So,
okay. So I'd like to go back to something that you said earlier, because you were talking about the importance of the language mm-hmm. in the work that you do. And I'm always so interested in the language, because to me, when someone is prospecting, you want that prospect to think that they hear themselves talking when yes. you pick up the phone and you call them. So yep. I was really struck when you mentioned a number of times the importance of using the right language. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and you just hit the nail on the head. It's actually something we record all of our sales calls, which I'm sure you counsel people to do. And when we're writing proposals, we reflect that language as well. It's something we think is really important, because if they're telling you that their goal is X, and then you're coming back to them and saying, oh, but we do Y and Z and B and C, and they will get you to X, but we didn't really focus on X, they're not going to care, right? They only want to hear what they've given you this challenge, and they want to hear that you can solve that particular challenge, no matter if it's how you talk about it or not. It doesn't matter. And so I think the same thing goes when we're building a website. I don't really care how our clients talk about themselves, because it doesn't matter. And a good example of this is we work with huge chains of family entertainment centers, which often include bowling alleys, right? Bowling centers. And so we have this client who was convinced he wanted to level up the view of bowling alleys. And so he wanted to stop calling them bowling alleys and wanted to start calling them bowling centers. And we had this long conversation around the fact that even just from the bare bones necessity of search engine optimization, no one that you are trying to sell to will call it a bowling center. we have to use the language of the people that you are selling to, and they are Googling, where's the nearest bowling alley in my neighborhood, And so just that like simple twist of like, I don't care what you're trying to do, because it doesn't work if, you're playing a long game that's not going to be successful in the way that you're thinking it is. So you really do have to reflect. And that's the hardest part of, we have to tell our clients, we're not going to say it the way that you want us to say it. When I read a client's website and don't understand what they do, even though I've been in 5 sales calls with them, we have a problem, because you're not speaking to somebody who, I'm an uninformed consumer, and I'm over here trying to figure out what you do. And I can guarantee you that every single visitor on your website is thinking the exact same thing. What does this mean? Vague language, rhetorical language, poetry, prose doesn't have any place on a website. You have about 0.5 seconds to tell somebody exactly what it is you do and for whom you do it. Get it over with. None of this vagueness it's so annoying to me. So, if we're trying to convince people to do anything, we have to be very clear about what it is we're trying to ask them to do.
Yeah. And you don't have a lot of time to do it.
You have no time to do it.
Yeah. So I remember many years ago when I wrote my first book, which came out in 2000, Cold Calling for Women, I took a book marketing course. And as part of the course, we were divided into teams, and each team was supposed to be a local bookstore. And we got a pile of books, and we had to go through the books and decide which books we would bring into our bookstore. We went through those books. We had something like 30, 40 books. We went through them in like 10 seconds. Nope. Just based on the cover.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I would imagine that's today, this is 1999. I would imagine today that's how people look at websites. Nope.
Yep.
Oh yeah, this one's good.
Yeah. And there's such a high level of trust that has to be earned in that split second as well. So it's like, I need to know that you do what I need you to do for me specifically, and that I can trust you to do it well. And if you haven't invested in a beautiful website, how do I know you're going to invest in a really great experience for me as a client? It doesn't seem like you care about my experience on your website, learning about your organization. So why would you care about the onboarding process? Why would you care about, all these other aspects of our experience and working together? And so there's, a lot of people don't think about how important that is, that those small triggers just help elevate or de-escalate the amount of trust you have with somebody when they're on your website. So it's important that you show them, we think this stuff is important. We think it's important that you understand how we're going to interact together, how we're going to behave when we're together, that sort of thing.
Okay. So is there any general advice that you have for sales leaders?
Get involved with the marketing as much as you can. Understand that you guys are sharing you should be sharing the same messages and on the same page with what you're selling. And so your marketing team can help you in ways you don't even know exist if you don't give them the window into what it is you're doing. And then I would also say to everybody, please, please, please go learn some technology. There's so much great tech out there that can help you do your jobs. And we meet so many sales teams that are so resistant to it. So doing the bare minimum.
Or if you can't learn it, just hire somebody that can.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking as a techno-moron.
Yeah.
Just hire somebody that understands it.
Yep.
And I love what you're saying, Andi. So if any of our listeners want to get in touch with you, which they should, how do they find you?
Sure. We are at bigc.co. There is no M, just CO. So it's bigsea.co. And you can find us there.
Okay, wonderful. And we're going to post that link in the show notes. So everyone that's listening in, if you want to talk to Andi, click on that link and you'll be able to reach out to Andi and have a conversation about marketing. And so to finish up for today, first of all, I want to thank everyone for listening in. I want to ask you to please share us on social media, tell your friends, give us good reviews. Thank you so much for listening to the Salesology Conversations with Sales Leaders podcast. And one more thing for Andi, actually, before we go, I almost forgot. Would you put your hand over your heart and promise to come back? Because this was a great conversation. And I'd love to continue it in another podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. It was great talking to you, Wendy.
Wonderful. And so then for all of our listeners, until we meet again, visualize yourself surrounded by cash. Really large bill stacks.
Oh, I like that.
You've been listening to Salesology, Conversations with Sales Leaders, the art of faster, easier, more profitable sales. Be sure to follow so that you don't miss a single episode. And while you're at it, please leave a rating and review and be sure to share it with your friends. Tune in every week for more exciting insights and wisdom on transforming sales. And until next time, visualize yourself surrounded by cash, very large bills.